All right, I'm here. Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Rational Live for June 26th, 2020. A lot of great stories today. Not everything's depressing. Actually, for the most part, today is not all that depressing. The stories that are kind of, negative are can be considered funny, maybe. I don't know. We're going to find out. Um, but before I start, of course, I got to do this. rationalnational.com/join. That's the Patreon page. Helps support the show. Uh, your support helps keep me going. YouTube's unreliable with all their stuff. But if you can't, no big deal. I know it's a hard time right now for people, but just got to mention it sometimes. I think I'm, I'm one of these people that barely ever mention the fact that I even have a Patreon page. But I have to, of course, do it because it keeps me going. Now, also, I want to remind you, I have a new Twitch morning show. So twitch.tv/therationalnational. That link is below the video in the description box. You go there, follow the page, or subscribe, and you'll be notified when I go live. So what I'm doing now in the mornings on Twitch, it's 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern. It's more of like a laid-back, kind of scroll through the latest news, look at clips and videos and tweets, and engage the chat throughout the entire thing. So it's a little more laid back than this stream is, but I think you'll enjoy it if you want more content. And of course, I'll be taking super chats throughout the stream as well. I just saw one pop up that I'll get to in a second. But first, give you a little overview here. I got a Dave Rubin clip coming up because it cracked me up. Not sure if I'll make a story out of it, but I gotta play it. Also, some clips from Trump's town hall with Sean Hannity. Ah, man. Yeah. Wait for that. Also, a Medicare for All advocate gets blindly slammed by a loser. I'll go over that. Meghan McCain. I'm bringing back some classics here. Dave Rubin, Meghan McCain. So a Meghan McCain clip. Again, something that you're going to laugh at. Also, Jamal Bowman on CNN pushing back against their BS. Very enjoyable. And more here. Polling when it comes to Trump versus Biden, how Trump's looking right now. He's getting destroyed. Sorry to spoil the news. But also, DoorDash pulls a Black Lives Matter stunt to distract from their anti-worker initiative. And at the very end here, I may get to, I haven't really prepped a story for this, but there's a report out that police allegedly punched a woman during a wellness check. Another one of these wellness checks in Canada gone wrong. So, a lot of stuff coming up. First, of course, let me get to a super chat that I saw pop up. Shelby Hall says, I'm in Phoenix. COVID-19 is really bad here. It takes 9 to 12 days to get test results if you can actually get a test. They're completely overloaded. So I covered coronavirus yesterday and where the U.S. sits right now. It's like the worst case scenario. That you haven't even gone to the bottom of like the first wave. You're still in the first wave, and you have the most cases now than you ever had, and that's with situations like this where people aren't even getting their test results in time. So I don't know what else to say except for what I've been saying the whole time. Be careful. If you do go out and go to one of these protests, make sure you wear a mask the whole time. Keep your distance. Try and stay safe. And don't go to restaurants. You don't have to go to a restaurant. And get takeout if you need it. But I don't see the point in risking yourself by going to a restaurant and exposing yourself to who knows who touches the dishes, the utensils, the people sitting around you. I just don't. I don't get how people are so. I don't know, just aren't taking this seriously, and you're seeing the impact of it. Now, I guess the benefit here is there's less deaths than there were before because right now a lot of the new cases are with younger people, but you still get really sick, and you can still die as somebody in your 20s or 30s. So don't think you're just you can get off scot-free because you're young. Okay. Let me actually, first I want to quickly mention this. This came out like 40 minutes ago or so. But breaking news story in out of Toronto here. So CBC News reports Toronto police officer found guilty of assault, brother not guilty in Devontae Miller beating case. So I haven't followed this case all that closely simply because there are so many police brutality cases, and it's depressing, quite honestly. But this one, in this case, so what happened is there was a plainclothes police officer, so a police who wasn't on duty, chased down this black kid. I think he's like 19. I don't know his exact age, but basically chased him down, thinking that he was breaking into cars. Chased him down, and him and his brother beat him. And it's the images. I'm not sure if they're in here, but the images from that beating. Here you go. I mean, really disgusting shit. But at least partial good news here with the officer being found guilty of assault. So there's that. But now let me get to... Oh, also, you know me. You know the stream. I like to start with something a little positive, a little happy when it comes to sharing a clip. This is not political at all, but I think it's enjoyable to watch this. So... let me show you this. This is Mariah on Twitter put out here. My dad's colorblind, and literally since I can remember, he's talked about wanting the glasses that can help the colorblind, but they've always been super expensive. So this Father's Day, I decided to give him the gift of color. I love you so much, Dad. Happy Father's Day. Check this out. This is really heartwarming.
What is this?
Do you know what they are now?
No, what is
Let
it?
him open it, Mariah.
Reading glasses?
They're the special glasses.
Are you serious?
Yeah. They're the special glasses.
So I think there's a follow-up here. Look, I'm not colorblind. I don't think I even know anybody who is, but this seems like the ultimate gift. Like living an entire life not really seeing true color, and then being able to wear a pair of glasses like this, and I mean, it's got to be like a life-altering experience. But let's just finish this here.
They ever.
Does it?
I don't even know how to explain it, but like I can see everything, like blues,
You can see purple now.
purple, greens, yellows, oranges. This is more like an orange, huh?
Yeah, the cedar.
The cedar is more like an orange.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Wow.
All right, sorry, didn't mean to make you all cry before I before I got into my stories here, but I thought that was a nice, heartwarming couple of clips. This blew up online too, like 7 million views. It's not showing here, but yeah, a lot of people saw this. Anyways, all right, now let's get to the actual news. Now that you're all in tears. Oh, actually, this isn't even really news either, but this is the Dave Rubin clip. I have to share this. So Dave Rubin's last appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast didn't go all that well for him. In fact, they ended up getting into a debate about building codes and regulations. And basically, Joe Rogan completely owned, for lack of a better term, Dave Rubin in that debate, in that discussion. And it was, I mean, it shows you for a grifter, for a right-wing grifter who used to pretend to be a progressive guy, and then, he left the left because they're very intolerant, which I'll get to some of that in a minute. But Dave Rubin apparently is trying to get back on the show. And it sounds like Joe Rogan is not going to let him back on. So this was shared by Dave Rubin Clips. If you enjoy laughing, I suggest, and you're on Twitter, I suggest following Clips at ClipsDave. Everything they post is amusing, but this one is fantastic. Check this out.
Will I go on Rogan's podcast? I asked him, and our PR people asked him about a bajillion times to go on for my book. We did not get a response as far as I know, so I don't know what happened there. It's a little weird for me to say that publicly. I don't know what happened. Will I go on Rogan?
So now, look, I have critiques of Joe Rogan's show. I do think he can get into topics that he knows very little about, and it's fine to have those kinds of conversations, at home with your friends and family, where you don't know what you're talking about sometimes. It's okay to have those conversations. But when you have a massive friggin' audience of millions of listeners, millions of viewers, and people hang on to every word, it's important to go into these discussions a little more informed. Like, I saw a recent clip where Joe Rogan was talking about Black Lives Matter activists, and basically saying that it seemed like they didn't really know what they were talking about. And when in reality, he didn't understand what they were fighting for. So just because you don't understand what a movement is fighting for, what people are fighting for, doesn't mean that they don't understand what they're fighting for. But not to go off on Rogan here, but just pointing out that despite that, Rogan is still able to catch the grifters. And Dave Rubin is the ultimate grifter. And it is amusing to see him be completely rejected by Joe Rogan's podcast. And I also want to share this. So recently there was a big Supreme Court decision on LGBTQ rights, basically saying you can't be fired for being gay or transgender. And Dave Rubin, who is married to a man, silent, totally silent about that historic ruling. I mean, arguably, it's even more important than the gay marriage ruling is, because it truly allows the LGBT community to live their lives freely and openly in their workplace. Dave Rubin said nothing about it, but he was very focused on the intolerant left, on how the left is the left is super intolerant of people. Meanwhile, here's his friend, Ben Shapiro, arguing against the ruling, saying this Gorsuch decision is not originalist in any way. He acknowledges as much. It is simply a bad outcome-driven legal decision, and it throws religious liberty, free speech, and employment law into complete turmoil. And he goes on a long thread about it. Now, if you want to get into the weeds, there is an argument in terms of the way Gorsuch is a textualist, and I guess it didn't really apply to this case. Whatever. The point being, this is a landmark ruling that has a massive benefit to people's lives, regardless of the minutia here. And Ben Shapiro, of course, arguing against it. Now, if the decision went his way, he would not be arguing against it. But because it didn't go his way, and it actually gives real rights to the LGBTQ community, then he's fighting against it. But Dave Rubin, apparently when conservatives are intolerant of the gay community, no, that's perfectly fine. It's the intolerant left. It's when, Ben Shapiro can't have his speech on a college campus. That's the real issue. So luckily, at least some people that have massive platforms like Dave Rubin or like Joe Rogan are catching on to the grift that Dave Rubin is offering all of us. All right. Now we get to the real stories. That was a 17-minute warm-up. Oh, there's more super chats here. All right. I don't want to God, YouTube's layout is horrible. It cuts off the chats halfway. I can't even read them properly. So I have to open up a separate window in case you're wondering why every time I do this, it takes me a few seconds to get these up. It's because the YouTube layout is not functioning properly. All right, here we go. Rory Dugal says, I apologize if this is a stupid question, but what is the state of Canada's economy? I hear all the time that Medicare for All would bankrupt the U.S. I apologize if this is a stupid question. Don't apologize for stupid questions. I don't think that's a stupid question at all. We're fine. I mean, we're in terms of the coronavirus, we're obviously as impacted as everybody else is. Nowhere near what the U.S. is, but people in Canada are actually taken care of. Now, of course, liberals never go as far as I would like them to, but they have been very pressured from the left by the NDP in Canada, which is our more left-wing worker party, in terms of pushing for a $2,000 a month, not really UBI, but it's called the CERB. So if you lost your job or were impacted by the coronavirus, you can apply for the CERB. You get that $2,000 a month. So in addition to that, there's also a massive wage subsidy that have allowed these companies to keep on their employees through this pandemic. So a lot of people really haven't lost their job in the way that you've seen in the U.S. because people are actually able to stay on the payroll and be able to collect that $2,000 a month. So, I guess we're doing all right considering the circumstances. And when it comes to Medicare for All, our single payer system, I mean, we've had it since the 60s. So it's not... That's had no negative impact at all on our economy. In fact, I would say it's helped us as people are, you don't have to worry about out-of-pocket expenses or paying for healthcare. It's all just guaranteed at the point of use. It's free at the point of use. There are gaps in our healthcare, so like dental care isn't covered. There isn't universal pharmacare. So there are aspects of our healthcare system. Long-term care homes have been really impacted during the coronavirus. That's also not under our Canada Health Act. So there are aspects of healthcare in Canada that should be under the Canada Health Act and should be universal and public that aren't. But I mean, unfortunately, this is what happens a lot when it comes to the discussion in Canada. In Canada, it's like, well, as long as we're not as bad as the U.S., then everything's fine, which that should not be the bar, but that is the bar. So when I'm talking about American politics, understand I'm not trying to say that Canada is perfect. We're not perfect. As when I talk about Canadian issues, I'm very focused and critical of what we are doing. But if I'm trying to communicate to an American audience, U.S. versus Canada, I mean, there's just no comparison when it comes to the healthcare system. I mean, you are being the amount of debt that people are in. The worry that people have when it comes to out-of-pocket expenses, even if they have insurance, and then losing your health insurance if you lost your job and your health insurance was tied to your employer. I mean, there is so many issues when it comes to the American healthcare system. Before this pandemic, 45,000 people a year died due to a lack of access to healthcare. That was before the pandemic. Who knows what it is now? And you have 500,000 people a year go bankrupt over healthcare costs in the U.S. Of course, that doesn't exist at all. There's no medical bankruptcy in Canada or other countries that have universal healthcare systems. So, yeah, there's just no comparison. I mean, the U.S. is way behind. And, part of the reason why having a Bernie Sanders presidency, it's not happening now, but if it were to have happened, and he was actually able to pass something like Medicare for All, it would have not even just an obvious positive impact in the U.S., but also worldwide and especially in Canada. Because we compare ourselves so much to the Americans and Medicare for All covers things like dental care, it would force our government to then wake up and have to push for universal dental care and other protections that are under Medicare for All that we don't have under our health care. So there is that sort of the standard that the U.S. has that is always applied to Canada. Our discussions here are always based on, well, as long as it's not as bad as the U.S., then we're okay. And, just based on that alone, it helps the conversations here if we have a more progressive president in the U.S. But also, of course, I mean, when it comes to the U.S. power in the world and the impact on the global South and the IMF and the World Bank and how they're intertwined with those groups and how, I mean, basically, the U.S. is completely intertwined in world politics and the world economy. So by having a more progressive president, it would help the world. And Americans need to understand that. Like, I get a lot of questions about why are you so focused on American politics? Apart from the fact that I grew up listening to American politics and that was kind of my entry point into politics, it's also the obvious fact of the power that the U.S. has over the rest of the world, that many Americans, if you just grew up in America, you may not have that realization or that awareness of what kind of power that America has on the rest of us. But thank you, Rory. Stephen, I'm sorry, I'm not good at last names. Heilsuk says, "Daddy, don't shave the beard. You look good. Laugh face heart." Thank you, Stephen. I think I've pretty much had a beard the entire time I've done this show. I think maybe if you go back to like 2016 or 2017, I shaved it for like a week or something, but I think I've always had it. Pertheron says, how can he tell about colors he's never seen? So colorblind people, I don't think they're not completely, like, they don't just see black and white, but they see muted colors. So they aren't able to see things as clearly as or see the colors as clearly or I guess obviously as people that aren't colorblind are able to see. That's my understanding anyways, but as somebody who's not colorblind, hard for me to explain. All right. Now we get to the real stories. 24 minutes in. But this is quite something, as you're going to see. Also, if you're new to the stream, as I am my own producer, just bear with me as I prep each story because it requires me to bring up a bunch of links. So just talk amongst yourselves in the chat as I prep this story. All right, I think I'm good. So Donald Trump had a town hall on Fox News with Sean Hannity, and I have some clips. This is both depressing and entertaining. But unfortunately, even when it's entertaining, you have to remind yourself that this man is the president. So let me start here with, this is just a 10-second clip. So just give credit here to Aaron Rupar. He put all these clips together on Twitter, breaking the insanity down. But this is a 10-second clip, and this kind of speaks for itself.
I think I am probably, a friend of mine said, you have to be the most perfect person.
They had everybody
Isn't
ever.
that true?
We'll take a.
And then the audience claps. Like, that's the cherry on top. It's just, let's watch this one more time. It's 10 seconds long.
I think I am probably, a friend of mine said, you have to be the most perfect person.
They had everybody
Isn't
ever.
that true?
We'll take.
I mean, this is, I don't, look, Trump says shit like this all the time, but the audience clapping at the end, come on. Can you imagine Bernie Sanders going out there? I'm told I'm the most perfect person. Or Barack Obama or Hillary Clinton, anybody else, even Republicans. I mean, I don't know, Mitch McConnell, the worst Republican imaginable. Imagine him saying, you know, people tell me I'm the most perfect person. Like, nobody would get away with this shit. But Trump does this. Of course, it can't be a headline because there's 1,000 other things he's doing that are actually impacting people's lives. But this is just, this is the start of of other crap we're going to get to here. So this one, so here is, this one, Donald Trump is taking credit for Obama's accomplishment.
Veterans Choice approved and Veterans Accountability. That's where you can fire people that do a bad job. You couldn't do it before. Very hard to get. They tried to get it for 50 years because of civil service unions, etc. You couldn't, get it. I got it. And the other thing is Veterans Choice, where if they can't see a doctor, we have great doctors in the VA, but if you can't see a doctor, you go out and you get a private doctor. We pay the bill. And you have no idea how great it's been.
Yeah, Barack Obama did that. In fact, here's the news from back then, August 7th, 2014. President Obama signs bill to give the VA the resources it needs, which includes, as I'm going to quickly find the quote here. Here you go. For veterans who can't get timely care through the VA, the bill will help them get the care they need someplace else. And this is particularly important for veterans who are in more remote areas, in rural areas. If you live more than 40 miles from a VA facility, or if VA doctors can't see you within a reasonable amount of time, you'll have the chance to see a doctor outside the VA system. So Donald Trump doesn't even know what the hell he's done. He's just taking, I think some people may look at this and think that, Trump knows what he's doing. No, I think he probably thinks he did this. Somebody in his circle probably told him that this is part of how the VA operates, and then he just took credit for it. I mean, this is the Trump mindset. Anything that may be good that he's done is actually what somebody else did, not actually what he did. Here's another one. This is a great one. Donald Trump is asked about his top priorities for a second term, and he can't name anything.
If you hear in 131 days from now, at some point in the night or early morning, we can now project Donald J. Trump has been reelected the 45th president of the United States. Let's talk. What's at stake in this election as you compare and contrast? And what are your top priority items for a second term?
Well, one of the things that will be really great, the word experience is still good. I always say talent is more important than experience. I've always said that. But the word experience is a very important word. It's in a very important meaning. I never did this before. I never slept over in Washington. I was in Washington, I think, 17 times. All of a sudden, I'm president of the United States. You know the story. I'm riding down Pennsylvania Avenue with our First Lady, and I say, this is great. But I didn't know very many people in Washington. It wasn't my thing. I was from Manhattan, from New York. Now I know everybody. And I have great people in the administration. You make some mistakes, like, an idiot like Bolton, all he wanted to do is drop bombs on everybody. You don't have to drop bombs on everybody. You don't have to kill people.
If John Bolton, in fact, released classified material, should he be prosecuted?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, he did release classified. Actually,
He never answered the question. He just went on and on randomly about how, what was it? The word experience is a really important word.
Project Donald J. Trump has been reelected the 45th president of the United States. Let's talk. What's at stake in this election as you compare and contrast? And what are your top priority items for a second term?
Well, one of the things that will be really great, the word experience is still good. I always say talent is more important than experience. I've always said that. But the word experience is a very important word. It's in a very important meaning.
What do you say to this? And then, of course, that on top of the fact that he can't actually say what his goals are, what his plans are for a second term, probably because he doesn't have any, and the people around him are the ones that are doing everything. So I mean, he really is a vehicle for the worst people possible in the Trump administration. But last clip here. This is something he said a number of times, and he keeps saying it, somehow comparing World War I and II to the coronavirus.
where you get in line and they're using, I said the other day, we went through World War I and we voted. We went through World War II and we voted. And now we have a virus. And by that time, it'll be less and less. Why aren't we going to vote? People want to vote. But it would be nice to be able to see the people. And until where you get it.
So this is just about voting by mail. Now, the reality is he knows he's going to get destroyed. And if the more people that can vote, the more he will get destroyed. When voter turnout is high, Democrats win. When turnout is low, Republicans win. And he knows that. That's maybe one of the few things he does know. So in knowing that, instead of just answering about voter by mail, which, by the way, he himself did, he talks about how people should be able to go out and vote. World War I, World War II, he did it. How about coronavirus? Are world wars contagious, as is mentioned here? I mean, it's a completely different scenario. You want to be able to give people the option to be able to vote from the safety of their home, as to not expose themselves, especially the elderly population, as to not expose themselves to getting the coronavirus and potentially dying from voting. So to use that as the reasoning, I mean, it just speaks to everything else that he does. He has no idea what he's talking about ever. And this is somebody that we are seeing the destruction of having a moron like this in power. You're seeing it with the coronavirus. You're seeing it with the protests in the street. He has no idea how to deal with anything, with any of this. And as I showed earlier in a different video, I wish I had it in front of me here, but the cases, the coronavirus cases have exploded in the US, while everywhere else, in fact, maybe I can bring up the link here. Here you go. So you see here cases in the US. Look how it's at its highest point ever right now. So this is daily new confirmed cases per million people. So yes, this is per capita. It's all relative here. So while the UK, Canada, Australia, other cases have gone down, very similar to each other. US cases skyrocketing. This is under Donald Trump. This is under a president who isn't taking it seriously, who's trying to hold indoor rallies with 20,000 people. Luckily, only 6,000 showed up. When you have a leader who doesn't take a pandemic seriously, this is the result. More people get sick, more people die. So whenever I think about this November in terms of what the actual goal is, I think the focus has to be 100% on just ending this nightmare, on getting out Donald Trump and ensuring this man is no longer in power. All right. All right, back to Super Chats. Let me grab a few here. Ken Clive says, U.S. culture plus policy should let go of the notion that employment plus wealth determines someone's worth. Otherwise, we will end up like India, where the average person barely scrapes by. Yeah, I mean, a lot of that is cultural. I'm not sure how much you can truly dictate that through policy. I guess you can if you are giving everybody the proper universal safety net. So people have, guaranteed housing, guaranteed health care. And then at that point, the focus now should be on what you're adding to society as opposed to, how much money you have. But I guess in terms of a policy perspective, that sort of policy push, having this universal, this universal safety net, would enable American culture to maybe move in that direction of valuing what people actually add to society as opposed to how much money they make. But that is I agree with you. I've discussed that before. it's a sort of mindset shift, cultural shift it's hard to do. It's hard to see a society evolve that way in a matter of years or a couple months. Like it takes, this is like a 50-year, 100-year long project to be able to shift a cultural mindset from valuing wealth to valuing I guess how you add to society in some way. But yeah, I agree with your point. Corey Foster says Montreal man dies in police custody last weekend. Can't find any coverage on it. I have not heard about it. I mean, there are endless stories at this point. It's showing you, I've talked about it a lot before. Defund the police is necessary, and you can also discuss it in a way where it doesn't just sound like you're attacking the police. I mean, defund the police. The only debate within that is how much defunding. So defund to abolish or defund, like the point of the conversation that I'm at is just the beginning of the conversation. Defund as in let's start with taking certain responsibilities off of the police, meaning that you actually in some ways help the officers that do want to do great work, because you then take some of the responsibilities that they have, like mental health calls, dealing with homelessness or drug abuse or overdose calls. You take that away from the cops and put that into public health or public housing. And in doing that, you are allowing the police to then focus on what they maybe want to focus on, and don't have to be this one-size-fits-all force where they're expected to excel in every area, which of course they are not, and are in fact incredibly destructive in a lot of what they do. So that's the beginning of the discussion for me, is take responsibilities away, defund the police. We need less police. Take those responsibilities away, put them into other areas, and then we can discuss from there. Status Quo, how's it going? Says, great show as always. My girlfriend urging me to get Canadian citizenship since my immediate family has some lineage there. It is tempting. I say go for it. If you have relatives that are Canadian, why not? Junior McGrath says, did you read the AP article of U.S. consumer spending went up by 8.2% in May, thanks to the stimulus checks and unemployment benefits? I wish this was a trickle-down economics mainstream media would talk about. Let me read this again. U.S. spending went up by 8.2% in May because the stimulus checks and unemployment benefits. Oh, so yeah. Yeah, of course. When you help people, when you actually give people, even though this is not really helping. I mean, $1,200. To be honest, I'm kind of surprised spending went up. Because that money, I guess spending went up in the sense that people could buy food again and eat. And maybe they were starving themselves before. I don't know. But $1,200 is nothing. And yeah, but of course, when you help people and they have some buying power, it's going to stimulate the economy. And this is what, this is the argument that people like Bernie Sanders have made, of course, and others have made, that if you actually, again, it always goes back to what are the actual goals of the right wing versus what are the goals of, Democrats versus what are the goals of progressives. But if your goal is to help people, for me, I could care less about how the economy is doing. How are people actually living? Are they okay? Do they have housing? Do they have food? Do they have entertainment? Can they pursue what they want to pursue in terms of a career? So that's my focus. For me, discussion about the economy is secondary. Like I don't really care. But yeah, it has the added benefit of putting money back into the economy and stimulating it. Cyrus 1976 says, if you put Trump's brain on the edge of a razor blade, it would look like a BB rolling down an 8-lane expressway. Wow, that is quite the visual. But thank you. I'm not even really sure if it's his brain as much as it's his obsession with himself. Trump is just a pure narcissist. Like, this is a point I should have made too when covering these videos. When you see him talk about the coronavirus numbers and the testing, and how when there's more testing, we have more cases, you can see in those answers that he does not give a shit about people. If your focus is like his focus is purely on the PR, on how it looks on him when there's more cases. He's not even like willing to pretend that when more people have the virus, more people die and more people are sick and we should be helping those people. Like that isn't even in his mind at all. His focus is completely on how this looks on him. So that's why he talks about, oh, we have more testing, we have more cases. Basically, he goes completely into defensive mode, trying to defend himself against the fact that there are all these cases in the U.S. But in doing that, he's completely ignoring the actual real impact on people's lives. I mean, it shows you, like, this is... Some people get angry at me, including people in my life, when I try and compare Trump and Biden, because they think there's no point even... Like, Biden has all his issues. Why even bring up Biden in this discussion? But it's important to bring him up because he's the other candidate in the race. And, you know, for all of his flaws, there is an impact that the way you carry yourself has as the president. I know this is often downplayed by left-wing, you know, people, including like myself, that downplay the rhetoric, but it does have an impact. When you have what Trump does in terms of, you know, I mean, all the racial shit he goes on with the Chinese virus, and of course, you know, with these protests going on, like you have somebody where hate crimes have spiked under Donald Trump. So that shows you, and that's separate from any laws that were passed or anything that was done. This is just his impact as somebody who is the president, the leader of the country, what he says, that impact on the culture, on society. So you see that the kind of real life impact that horrible words have on people's lives, that makes a difference. Having a leader that doesn't do that makes a difference. I know it seems like, you know, not a lot to some people, but there's a difference there. And then I also, you know, personally, as somebody who does this stuff, I'm looking forward to criticizing Joe Biden as president. I'm looking forward to focusing on what his administration isn't doing, what they should be doing, and putting the fight there. Because when you have the president as Donald Trump, and he's the one that's in power, and Republicans are in power, I mean, what are you fighting against? Because they're not going to listen to people like me. They're not going to listen to the left at all. I mean, there's no hope. So there's no actual real, there's no opportunity for anything under a Republican presidency. Under a Democratic presidency, you can focus on that presidency and push for real change and push for movements, and there is potentially an impact. Now, I'm not saying that, you know, Joe Biden's going to pass Medicare for all. I don't think he will. But there is an impact for, you know, some improvement and not having to refight the same fights we've had for the past 4 years. I mean, Donald Trump is causing us to refight things we've already won. And I mean, if it comes to something like, you know, I don't know, there's countless stuff. But one of the first things he did when he became president was restart that pipeline that Obama put an end to. Obama ended the pipeline. Trump came in and restarted production on it. So, like, that's a real world thing that you can't ignore. The Iran deal, a real world thing you cannot ignore. So, you know, even just apart from the cultural impact that Trump's had, and, you know, the over 120,000 deaths from coronavirus, like, this is stuff I don't know how anybody can't see the differences. I'm not saying that, you know, what is offered on the Democratic side is sufficient. It's not. But there are obvious differences, and you can't ignore that. But anyways, I just went on a rant. Let me finish some of these super chats, and then I'll get to the next story. Robert Dredden says, hey, what's up, David? Dig your channel, bro. Donald Jim Crow has to go. Keeping a voice for the people, power to the people, we the people. Thank you, Robert. Jesse Newman says, case for Biden. Dems won't be able to hide behind faux resistance. Also, progressive protests will be more impactful in the eyes of regular voters against Dems in power rather than against Trump. Yes, exactly. I think Jesse hits those points on the head. Democratic lawmakers can't hide behind Donald Trump if Biden's in power. They actually have to. They're going to be looked to for some actual leadership, and you're going to see people like Jamal Bowman, potentially Charles Booker. I mean, if Charles Booker can beat Mitch McConnell, whoo! Can you imagine that world? I'm looking forward to that world. So look, that world is possible. Even if the man, in the White House isn't going to be someone that we're happy with, you're going to have a whole slew of new fighters in Congress that you should all be excited about. Andrew Dwyer says, now that some progressives won, what other strategies will the establishment try to keep them from winning more seats? They're just going to keep doing what they're doing, and it's a losing battle. I mean, you saw, I did a story on this today. McGrath, over $40 million poured into her campaign. Charles Booker, $800,000. And last I checked, maybe it's changed since then, but last I checked, Booker's up by 3.5 points. So they're going to do the money thing because that's all they know. They're going to get as much money as possible, flood the airwaves, and hope they win. But it's getting to a point now where it doesn't work anymore. And if you have somebody that has experience on the ground, like Charles Booker is a known person in that state, so he's been able to amass the kind of support that he has from not even just people in the state, but also from newspapers that are popular in the state that have endorsed him, and from national leaders like Bernie Sanders, like AOC that have backed him. So if you have a great candidate, like you do with Charles Booker, like you do with Jamal Bowman, then you're able to build that movement around them. And nothing can stop that, no matter how much money these corporations put into an establishment pick. All right, pausing there to go to the next story. All right. So I want to share this because this tweet blew up. Some comic book guy, as you're going to see, blindly slammed a prominent Medicare for All advocate for being somebody who is a reformed health insurance executive. So what I'm talking about is Wendell Potter. So Wendell Potter used to work for, is a former health insurance executive, worked for Cigna. He left that in 2008. Since then, he's become a whistleblower for the industry, talking about how the health industry basically, puts misinformation out there to try and trick people into not supporting Medicare for All. So he is a big Medicare for All advocate, whistleblowing on the insurance industry. But people that don't do an ounce of research, like this man here, who, I don't know, does comic book stuff. I'm not slamming that, but that's what he does. Comic book writer, host of DC Daily. So he tweeted out, this utter piece of shit actually admitted it. Now, if Sam here did, a second of research, he would have seen that Wendell Potter has been at this since, for 12 years now. Has been fighting for Medicare for All for 12 years, has left the industry, as I said, and fighting for Medicare for All. Now, I went over this Twitter thread in a separate video that I did on I'll link below or link above for the audience that watches this later. But let me show you the video version of this Twitter thread, since I already shared the actual thread. But Wendell Potter here posted this. So here he discusses how the health insurance industry in the U.S. misinformed Americans about the Canadian healthcare system.
When it comes to keeping its people safe from COVID, Canada has the United States beat by a long shot. More Canadians are being tested and fewer are getting sick and dying from the virus. Now, this might come as a shock to those Americans who've fallen for the lies told by insurance companies about the Canadian healthcare system. You know, the lies about Canadians waiting in long lines for knee replacements, repeating nonsense about Canadians coming to the U.S. for care. I know this because I helped spread those lies, and they obviously worked. AHIP, the insurance industry lobbying group, supplied my colleagues and me with those cherry-picked data points and anecdotes that they knew strategically would strike alarm in many Americans. On a per capita basis, Canada has experienced far fewer cases and deaths from COVID than we have. There have been about 21 deaths per 100,000 in Canada compared to 34 per 100,000 in the US. Our healthcare system got overwhelmed, but not Canada's, because Canada's healthcare system is financed smarter than ours. Why? Because Canada's publicly funded system enabled hospitals to cut out wasteful spending and to be able to coordinate their responses with each other to address all sorts of issues across provinces, including but not limited to COVID. There are many takeaways from COVID, but one is abundantly clear. When compared to our neighbors to the north, thanks to a system rooted in greed and denial of care, the U.S. has fumbled the response to the virus, and too many of us are dying. This is not what winning looks like. We can learn a lot from Canada and every other rich country that has universal health care.
Now, imagine calling that guy a piece of shit. I mean, you have to be able to understand the value that someone like Wendell Potter brings to the discussion. Here is a man who has now dedicated his life to getting Medicare for all enacted. This is the kind of person you have to respect and understand that you need people like this. You want to encourage this. You want to encourage more people to do this, as they are clearly a very important piece or part of informing people about how the health insurance industry has a hold on healthcare in the U.S. and misinforms people. As Alex Koch here tweets out, if you don't want an ally who, because of his life experience, completely changed his stance on healthcare in the U.S., has repeatedly repented, and is spending the rest of his working years fighting for free healthcare for every single person, what's the point? Exactly. So again, I only really shared this because this has 80,000 likes. It's completely ridiculous to call this man a piece of shit who has fought 12 years now for Medicare for all. We need more people like this. We need more people, more health insurance executives to get the hell out of the industry, to expose what's going on. Of course, many of them, ultimately, they value money above all else. And they're not going to get out of the industry. Because, I mean, once you get a taste of that healthcare money, why leave? And just to comment here on a lot of what Wendell Potter was saying. My experience as a Canadian, I mean, he's spot on. It's funny the questions that I see in comments whenever I do healthcare videos and I talk about Canada. People will ask me, but how about the wait times? I'm like, wait times? What are you talking about? what wait times? Now, look, of course, just like anything, that there are also wait times in the U.S. For certain like elective procedures but the difference is if you have enough money, then you can buy your way to the front of the line. Whereas in Canada, healthcare is given based on needs. So there's this idea that there's rationing. There's rationing in universal systems. There's also rationing in the American system. In the American system, rationing is based on wealth, whereas in universal systems, rationing is based on need. If you need a life or death surgery, you're getting it immediately. So, and if you don't, then yeah, there may be a wait time, but you can wait. For example, I had an elective procedure surgery years ago now, but it wasn't life or death. I could wait. So I was on a wait list for 2 months. I got the surgery. I was fine. I wasn't in pain waiting. It wasn't a big deal. But if that was like a life or death scenario, I would have had that surgery immediately. And when it comes to, your standard things like doctor visits, I make same day appointments with my doctor. I'm not sure everyone has that experience, whether Canada or the US, but from my experience, most people that I know, for the most part, you can get a same day appointment with your doctor. And even if you can't, say your doctor's out of town, you can go to a walk-in clinic. Walk-in clinics, again, free at the point of use. We're on a public system, a single payer system. So you can go to any walk-in clinic and see any doctor. So, and again, no out-of-pocket expenses, nothing. You just walk in, you show your health card, you see the doctor, you leave. That's it. And the only reason that there's any confusion at all about this in the U.S. is because of the years and years of propaganda that have been pushed out there by the health insurance industry. And it's good to have people like Wendell Potter out there discussing that. I say this every time I do a healthcare story, but I always feel like I missed a ton of things. There's so much to say on healthcare. Because also, as I've said before, our system also is not perfect. But compared to the U.S., I mean, that kind of video that I just did is for an American audience. But if I'm doing a video on what we should be doing here, then, you know, dental care, pharmacare, long-term care, all should be covered. Okay, let me get some of these super chats here. Winnert says, David, would you have you gone on Jimmy Dore's show or Kyle Kalinski's? Y'all are my faves. I've been on Jimmy Dore's show, I think just once. So yes, I've been on Jimmy Dore's show. Kyle doesn't have many guests on. I mean, he's kind of like me. I don't have many guests on my show either. But no, I haven't talked to Kyle, but I mean, we've talked, but not on the show. Mr. Sir says, hey, David, this has nothing to do with the news, but want to hear a popular gamer's joke? Google Stadia. I have heard of that. That's like a streaming device, right? Google Stadia. Funny joke. But yeah, that thing is dead in the water. Little known fact, I used to cover video games. That was kind of, at one point that was like a goal for me, was to just kind of work in the game industry and cover video games. And then I realized it's not all that fulfilling. No, I really wanted to kind of do something else and inform people on the world. But Last of Us Part 2, I'm in the middle of that right now. Fantastic game. Check it out. Owen Gobo says, what about dental costs / options? Yes, of course. As I've said, Canada, we don't have dental care covered. That is a problem. So yeah, that's the only time we really have, I mean, not the only time, but part of supplemental insurance, like if you work for a company, for example, like when I worked in marketing, you can pay into health insurance that covers dental care and gives you other small benefits. Otherwise, you're paying out of pocket for dental, which is why I haven't gone to the dentist in 6 years. Probably not a great idea. But I do brush my teeth every day. I have an electric toothbrush, so I don't floss all that much though. I probably need to floss more. But yeah, we need dental care covered. We need it. There are a lot of people, I'm sure like myself, who are self-employed and are just not going to the dentist. It's a problem. Tyler Cuss, thank you for your donation. All right, next story here. Meghan McCain. This one's going to be fun. I keep burping. I had beans for lunch, a bean salad. Probably shouldn't do that on a Friday. It's really bothering me. All right, here. So John Bolton appeared as a guest on The View this week. John Bolton, of course, is Trump's former national security advisor. A massive war hawk, supported the Vietnam War when he was in college. So, you know, it goes back that far to, of course, him helping to advocate for the Iraq War and also push to escalate tensions in Iran, Syria, North Korea. So when he was on The View, of course, you know, understanding John Bolton's record and his horrible history, Meghan McCain's first question was about Hamilton. Hamilton, the Broadway show. So let me play this hilarious interaction. This is why she makes the big bucks.
Ambassador Bolton, your book is the title of a key song from the huge hit Hamilton that's sung by Aaron Burr. Lin-Manuel Miranda, the creator of Hamilton, has vocally criticized your use of the title, tweeting about someone, quote, who borrows your song to title to write a cash-in book, who writes a cash-in book when they could have testified before Congress. Do you understand that the meaning of that song is, do you understand why it's a song about someone being unprincipled, not principled? And do you understand why it's insulting to those of us that are fans of Hamilton to co-opt art from Lin-Manuel Miranda for your own political purposes?
Well, I think you've mischaracterized what was done. This title was derived by a lot of discussions about what it might be. You know, the phrase "in the room" is a phrase used in Washington 1,000 times a day. So it's a fair use, and I think it summarizes what we were trying to do.
Do you understand why fans of Hamilton and Lin-Manuel Miranda would be angry at its use, though?
Look, I'm a fan of Hamilton too, and the exact story that song was predicated on was the critical deal where Hamilton, negotiating with Jefferson and Monroe, got the Southerners to agree for a federal assumption of all the state debts in exchange for the capital being put on the Potomac. That is one of the original compromises of American government, one of the most important things that happened. So,
all right, I don't really care to hear the rest of John Bolton's answer here. It's not really important. The room where it happened. This is a very general, often used term. For one of your questions to be about Hamilton, when you're talking to a horrible man, your question's about the title of his book and how it's the same as the title of a song in Hamilton. How are you not embarrassed? How are people on the show with her, the other co-hosts, how are they not embarrassed by this? I mean, this is why people of privilege should not be in media, should not be talking to people like John Bolton. They have no idea what the hell is going on. They don't know what actually matters. They're like, for your focus to be Hamilton. Look, Meghan McCain, I haven't covered her BS in a while. Of course, I hope by now a lot of her crap is obvious to people. But I mean, this is a massive show. Millions of people watch this. And she just spent, what, like 2 minutes, 3 minutes talking about Hamilton? With John Bolton on your show, you talk about Hamilton? People have to understand, like, this television is not where you're getting, you know, the news or any insight into what is going on in the world. Like, this is an entirely totally embarrassing moment for Meghan McCain. I mean, maybe, look, she's had many embarrassing moments. This is maybe one of the top ones. I truly do not understand the concern about the title of his book. Who cares? You have a massive war hawk in front of you who's never seen a war he didn't like. There's got to be better questions. But no. Broadway. Anyways. Maybe that's the last Meghan McCain video ever. Probably not. But maybe. Also understand, I know some people get bothered when I cover her. There's a method to the madness. It's important to cover shit like this, cultural BS like this, because this is how you expose other ideas to a audience that largely doesn't hear them. there are multiple people now that I've seen that say they first discovered me when I covered Meghan McCain. So, and they were not all that into politics before. So by engaging these sorts of topics, you're able to engage a different audience that is able to hopefully better inform themselves with at least some of what I do. But that's the purpose of a segment like that. Truly stunning. The stupidity is stunning. All right. Let's see if I got more chats here. I do. Tyler Cuss says, if Biden wins, it would be good for the 2024 president primary for progressives. Trump was the reason Biden won. Voters will want something better in 2024 after Biden. Well, Biden is not expected to run both terms. He's already, look, in my estimation, Biden already is not mentally capable of really being the president, just from what we've seen of him. Now, he's more capable than a dangerous madman who allows white supremacists around to control things like Donald Trump. But the people that are running the show, I think, likely to run the show in a Biden administration is not Joe Biden. It's people around him. And Joe Biden is expected to step aside for his vice president pick, who I'm going to guess at this point is likely Kamala Harris. I guess it could be Val Demings, maybe Elizabeth Warren. But that's what he's expected to do, is step aside for his VP. And it's going to be very hard to primary a VP. I guess depending who it is, if it's Val Demings, who is a former police chief in Orlando, maybe a little easier to try and primary her. But even then, I don't think it'll be all that easy. So, I mean, yeah. Unfortunately, that's sort of the next 8 years is Biden and whoever is his VP. But the upside is that you have a very vocal, very angry millennial generation and Gen Z that are out there that are not going to take no for an answer and are going to continue pushing their elected officials. I mean, the Trump's rally on Saturday, where like 6,000 showed up, and the TikTok teens and K-pop fans were part of the reason for that, because they reserved like a bunch of tickets and made it seem like there was going to be a huge turnout for Donald Trump. That was generated by people that are like 14, 15 years old. So if they're already engaged in, I mean, that's activism. So if they are already engaged in real political activism at age 14, 15, imagine in the next 4 years. So I'm excited. I am excited for Gen Z to join us millennials in this fight and not settle for whatever the corporate Democratic establishment throws at us. So just because Biden wins does not mean the fight's over. The fight just begins. Mr. Sir says, hey, David, a friend of mine apparently suffered from depression and anxiety, secretly used magic mushrooms, and it apparently helped him a lot. I cannot advocate for anything like that, but I have heard stories like that, and they appear to be accurate. All right. Of course. Let's get to some polling numbers here. Take a look at. Excuse me. Again, it's the beans. Take a look at where Trump sits in the polls compared to Biden, including some deep red states. All right. So Donald Trump is getting absolutely hammered right now in the polls. And that includes red states. So I'm going to show you national poll average here. I'm going to show you some red states, including it's a Fox News poll, in case there's any question about it. And I'm also going to show you averages by states when it comes to more swing states. But first here, let's take a look at the Real Clear Politics polling average. You see here, Biden, on average, is up by 9.5. There is no recent election that is anywhere near this. And understand, this is not because people love Joe Biden. This is, I mean, if anything, the fact that Joe Biden's been largely invisible, I think, is helping him quite a bit. This is because people want to get out Donald Trump. And of course, yes, caveat here, national numbers, it doesn't translate to swing states, but we will get there. But of course, you can win the national vote or the popular vote and still lose the Electoral College. But 9.5 is a lot. And I mean, you're seeing the trend here. Donald Trump just totally tanking right now. Now, but it is not just national. Let's take a look at what they consider to be swing states. I guess these are, as he puts out, new swing state polls. Biden showing leads in Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and Texas. So these are states that are not expected to be swing states, are not expected to be for Democrats. Democrats don't need these states in order to win the presidency. But right now you have Biden up by 9 points over Trump in Florida. Now, I will say, as a hardcore Bernie supporter, Florida is one state that would have been a little tough for Bernie Sanders because of all the misconceptions about socialism in Florida. But Biden right now leading comfortably in Florida against Donald Trump. Georgia up 2 points in Georgia on Donald Trump. North Carolina up 2. Texas up 1. So, yeah, I mean, a state like Texas, I think Bernie would be doing a lot better in Texas compared to Trump because Bernie had a lot of Latino support. But you're seeing here where the race stands in states that aren't even supposed to be swing states. Also, of course, let's take a look at the traditional swing states. So Michigan here, Biden up 8.6. Wisconsin, Biden up 8. And this is actually a big one because for a while, Trump was beating everybody in Wisconsin. I mean, you put him up against even Bernie Sanders. Bernie wasn't doing as well against Trump in Wisconsin, though he was doing better than everybody else was. But that's changed since the coronavirus. I mean, this is really what's gone on. This pandemic has enabled people to really wake up and see the destruction that a complete idiot like Donald Trump can have on actual people's lives. And Trump's support among the elderly has collapsed because of that. So you're seeing here, Wisconsin, huge support for Biden over Trump. Florida, as I was just discussing, here's a plus 6.8. So this is this is the average compared to the Fox News poll. But this is the average he's up by 6.8. Pennsylvania, average up by 6.3. Arizona, up by 4. North Carolina, up by 2. So, yeah. Of course, the election's in November, still months away. So anything can happen. Anything can change. There could be some miracle and coronavirus just evaporates and it all goes away. And the people that died, the 120,000 people that died, come back to life and never meant anything. But of course, I think it's going to be very hard for Trump to come back from this. And it's because of the long-lasting impact that the virus has had. And people are seeing now, I mean, just the complete devastation. And not even just in terms of the people that have the virus, but also in terms of the economy, people losing their job, and in turn also losing their health care and having nothing to help themselves with. $1,200, a one-time check of $1,200 is nothing. You look at other countries. You look at my country of Canada. We have $2,000 a month if you lost your job due to COVID-19. So a one-time check of $1,200 when Americans can look outside their borders and see what other countries are doing to help their people, it shows a real failure from the leadership in the White House. And it's resulting in this massive turnaround. So regardless of what Joe Biden does, and I keep saying I think he should just hide. barely even tweet. I've seen a number of recent Joe Biden tweets that are terrible. Joe Biden really has to not do anything. Stay in the basement. Don't go on camera. Don't do anything. And just allow Trump to destroy himself. And really, ultimately, I mean, going into November, I know it can sound weird to say that Biden should be invisible, because then you can ask, well, then what? You just want like an invisible president instead of Trump? And I would say, yes, I do. I think anybody should want that. But something like under a Democratic presidency, there's actual potential. There is some potential for the left to have at least somewhat of a voice in terms of in the streets. Like right now, what you're seeing in the streets with these protests, Trump doesn't care. The GOP don't care. They're not going to react at all. I mean, they're pretending to care about police reform, banning chokeholds. How the police break the law all the time. Like that doesn't do anything. You have to actually take serious steps to make real reform, which includes defunding the police. But these sorts of policy conversations like defund the police don't get center stage until you have Republicans out of power. And then Democratic politicians have no excuse at all. So look, I don't want to focus too much on the potential future there if Democrats were to get into power, because we'll have that discussion later on if it happens. But just absorb here the complete collapse of Donald Trump. And I would have loved to see his face when this popped up on screen with him watching Fox News. He can't escape it. And this is why you're seeing him every single day. He's more unhinged on Twitter. He's just tweeting shit that doesn't even make any sense. He's trying to do whatever he can to distract from the reality that is his massive failure of a presidency. All right. More chats here. There are more chats. Winnert says, hell yeah, millennials ruined America. I don't think you mean that. Millennials now are beginning to have a little power for once. Celeste says, millennials are the worst. Leave the future to Gen Z. There is some fun competition happening online between millennials and Gen Z. I do enjoy it. Dwayne Bramble says, hi, David, great work. I do agree that we need to start building a progressive move to challenge the moderates in 2024 and not get caught flat-footed. Sure. I'm not against building that. Well, first of all, I think it's already being built. You're seeing it right now with these protests. So, but if you mean like an actual challenger, a primary challenger to whoever the vice president, again, assuming Biden wins, assuming he steps down, to whoever his vice president is, yeah, I'm not opposed to it. At the same time, I don't know. Maybe it is possible. 4 years is a lot of time. Anything's possible. So sure, build it, and maybe it will actually work. D. Relzen says that RCP average doesn't include the Reuters Ipsos poll, so it's really more like plus 12 or plus 14. I wonder why it doesn't include that. You are correct. I don't see it there. He continues tanking. Like, I think there's also big donation, much appreciated. I think there's this assumption that Trump's going to be he's going to jump back up, because he always does, right? He goes down a little bit, then he goes back up. But this is a case right now where he's tanking because of what is happening, and what is happening, the virus isn't coming to an end. So I don't. Unless he goes out there with a universal basic income and Medicare for all, like really, he's gonna have to pull out something like that for him to turn this around. And I don't see that happening. So, we'll see, but don't hold your breath. All right, pausing there to go to this DoorDash story. Okay. So DoorDash is donating $500,000 to Black Lives Matter, which sounds great, right? Except they are doing this while they are spending $30 million to fight new labor laws in California. So what I'm going to show you here with DoorDash, it's not just about DoorDash. This is what corporations do. They'll make these donations to make it seem like they care about the moment, what's going on right now. Oh, I'm going to give money to Black Lives Matter. But then when it comes to actual making material differences in people's lives and actually doing something to benefit people, they're doing the complete opposite and doing that behind the scenes. So let me first show you the top line here when it comes to DoorDash donating $1 million to fight racial justice, or for racial justice. So half of that is going to Black Lives Matter, and the other half is them doing their own fund. Something else corporations love to do is give money to themselves to fight for issues they care about. Now, look, on its face, this is good. If this was the only piece of news here worth focusing on, this is good by itself. But this is what's actually happening behind the scenes here. So, as the LA Times reports, Uber, Lyft, DoorDash launched a $90 million fight against California labor law. So let me give you the first bit of info here. The proposal, which Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash intend to qualify for the statewide ballot next November, states that an app-based driver is an independent contractor as long as a series of conditions are met by a company. If approved by voters, the initiative would also enshrine in state law a number of perks for those workers, including a minimum amount of pay as well as insurance to cover work-related injuries and auto accidents. And it lays out details for health care subsidies, protections against on-the-job harassment or discrimination, and a system to enforce some workplace rights. Now, look, the way LA Times write this, it makes it sound like, oh, this is an incredible ballot initiative. They're fighting for all these protections for workers. No. In reality, this is a reaction to Assembly Bill 5. So this is a rejection of Assembly Bill 5, which treated gig workers more like employees. So in response to their workers now having all of these benefits, all of this support, and the ability to, say, form unions, they are instead rejecting that in favor of their own initiative that they are pouring a ton of money into to ensure that they essentially protect their own bottom line. So let me give you the quote here, which of course comes at the very end. They get to how labor groups actually feel about this. That's never going to be at the top of the story. Got to dig to the bottom. But here, labor groups vow to fight the ballot measure. These CEOs are attempting a big money veto to undo labor protections the bipartisan California Supreme Court, the California legislature, and the governor all agree on, said Art Pulaski, Executive Secretary Treasurer of the California Labor Federation. No corporation should be above the law, no matter how much they spend on political campaigns to rig the rules in their favor. So this is what happens. And of course, DoorDash isn't the only company doing this. In fact, maybe even some of these other companies that I mentioned, be it Uber, Lyft, it's possible they've given money to Black Lives Matter. But this is what companies do. And, I share a story like this because I want people to understand that when companies give, money in situations like this to movements like this, it's not done in a way to actually help the movement. It's done as a PR expense. They do this to help their own PR, to make themselves look better. So then when they were fighting for this ballot initiative, they think, hey, people are going to remember that we gave $500,000 to Black Lives Matter. And, which means, we have pure intentions when it comes to pushing this ballot initiative, this anti-worker ballot initiative. So you got to support what we're fighting for here in this ballot initiative, because we gave all that money to Black Lives Matter. Not telling those same people that, oh yeah, we also, spent $30 million trying to fight against these labor laws. So it's important to be able to catch on to stuff like this. Whenever you see a big company give a lot of money to any group that, it sounds like a great story, just do a little research. Look into that company, maybe just type in that company's name and labor laws, and it's possible things will come up in terms of what they've actually been fighting against. Because it's good to give money to Black Lives Matter, but if you're fighting against the material benefits, actual improvements in people's lives, then ultimately it's all done as a giant PR stunt. All right. One more story here, but let me grab some of these chats. It appears there are a lot coming in today. I appreciate the support. Mr. Sir asks, hey, David, have you ever smoked pot on screen? No. I also don't think you're even allowed to. I think that's against the terms of service. Which, I mean, maybe one day when it becomes legal, it like everywhere, even though it's legal in Canada, maybe it'd be fine then, but I don't know. Winner says, I was being sarcastic. Oh, about millennials ruining America. Yes, of course. I assume that. Elephants on Coke says, what did Antifa take to the airport? A cab. That's funny. That's pretty funny. Citizen Zero. And by the way, I would explain that, but I'm not even sure I can say that B word on screen. But all cops are B. But that's a funny joke. I haven't heard that one. Citizen Zero says, you don't think 4 more years of Trump gives us progressives a better chance in 2024? Are we playing this game again? That was the same argument made in 2016. That if Trump wins in 2016, Bernie's got it in the bag in 2020. People are going to know after 4 years of Trump, they're going to wake up and realize we got to support Bernie Sanders. It didn't happen, guys. Most voters, I'm talking about the older generation mostly. I know a lot of you watch me. You're awesome. But we know who supports the Joe Bidens. It's not people under 45. They just want a return to normal. That's what happened. Trump lowered the bar so much that Joe Biden, who can barely get through, 2 sentences, is the nominee. That was good enough for people because they viewed Joe Biden as a return to normal. Hey, we're comfortable with it. We know Joe Biden. We know what to expect. No surprises. So, no. What you're saying here is it's going to lower the bar even more to, having Chris Coons in 2024, which you don't want. So, no, all Trump has done is lower the bar and cause us to have to refight the same fights we already won. We have to we're still fighting like abortion rights. Seriously? Criminal justice, like issues. And the total failure on the coronavirus. And climate change, the pipelines. More is coming to me every time. I don't understand how anybody can think this way. When we've already gone through this, we went through this. It did not, having Trump for 4 years did not turn people to go progressive. It just made people more acceptable of shitty politicians like Joe Biden. So no, what you're saying is wrong. Not true at all. Not going to happen. And also, think about, this is the other piece that I should mention more often. The Democrats that are willing to fight, like Bernie Sanders, like AOC, like Jamal Bowman now, they have more power under a Democratic presidency and more of a willingness to fight a Democratic president. So the reason why you're not seeing, and to give you an example of that, in case you think I'm crazy, go back to, I think it was 2011, when Bernie Sanders was out there publicly fighting Barack Obama because Obama was trying to cut Social Security. So you had a fighter back then. Now you have a lot more of them. And you're going to have them be vocal when it comes to what Joe Biden is or isn't supporting. Because this is why a lot of them are silent right now when it comes to the Democratic leadership. Why Bernie isn't saying enough about, say, Nancy Pelosi, or why, AOC is silent on her, and the others. It's because Trump's the president. They see, whether you agree or not, they see that if they are vocal about fighting the Democratic leadership right now, in terms of just being a little more, I mean, they are fighting them in some ways. I mean, you're seeing the endorsements for Jamal Bowman from people in the Democratic Party over Eliot Engel, who's an incumbent. Like, you can't ignore those kinds of moves. But in terms of like policy, when it comes to, say, the response to the coronavirus, you're not seeing them be as vocal and as aggressive against Nancy Pelosi because Trump is the president. And having that focus on Pelosi, they feel, this is my assumption, but I think it's a fair assumption, they feel that if they focus too much on Democratic leadership, then that makes them look bad because they're not focused on Donald Trump. But if Donald Trump's out of the way, guess what? There's no more excuses. So at that point, I mean, just wait. If Biden wins and any of these people are silent, if AOC goes silent when Joe Biden does something stupid, or Jamal Bowman or Bernie Sanders, I will be out there, I mean, pushing all of them. And not just me, people with bigger platforms like TYT, like Kyle Kalinske. We will be out there pushing these people to do a lot more. And they're going to feel the pressure because there's no excuse at that point. If Trump's out of the way, there is no excuse. They have to actually fight Democratic leadership that is not doing enough. So I'm excited for that fight. I am very excited for that fight. And Jamal Bowman, by the way, I think I missed it. I totally missed a story. Thank God I brought him up. I have a Jamal Bowman video coming up. But I've seen him in the media. He's not held back at all. He is, I mean, you saw in his speech when he won. He was discussing how he cannot wait to bring the fight to the status quo. He was saying that in his victory speech. Like, this is a guy who he's not going to back down. He's experienced what people in his district are experiencing in terms of, just the lack of resources and no real help when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to wages, when it comes to everything. So people like that who come from that experience, that awareness, they have that fight in them, and you are going to see that when it comes to a Democratic leader in the or Democratic presidency, because there's no more excuse at that point. All right, this video, I can't believe, I don't know how I skipped by this in my notes, but it was right there. Thank God I did not forget that, just to make sure I didn't skip anything else. Okay, I don't think I did. All right. So I will stop there on the Super Chats, and I'll get back to them after this story. So Jamal Bowman, soon-to-be congressman for New York's 16th District, was on CNN with Aaron Burnett, and he was asked about defund the police. Now, this clip here is going to show you just really how little CNN hosts know about left-wing policy. Watch this.
Majority Whip Jim Clyburn. He wants police reform, but here's what he told me about how he views the defund movement. Here he is.
History is instructive. I was there along with John Lewis back in the 60s and the early 70s. We saw how our movement got hijacked. We did a lot back then that led to where we are today. We would have done even more if we had not got overtaken by sloganary, burn, baby, burn, took off in this country. Be careful that we don't get hijacked this time like we got the last time.
What do you think when you hear his thoughts?
Well, defunding the police is about a reallocation of resources. It's about a demilitarization of the police and investing in public health. investing in housing, investing in jobs, investing in education and healthcare and environmental justice, investing in mental health supports. 50% of those killed by the police suffer from some mental or physical disability. What that means is we need to take a different approach, not a lethal approach. Defunding the police also means the end of sending military equipment to local police forces that they then use on people within the community. So it's not defunding as a rallying cry, but what it means is it's a reallocation of resources toward public health and other areas that we've neglected for quite some time.
So it sounds like what you're saying is you understand his point. Sometimes words can come to mean something to people that may not actually be what you're saying. I mean, you're saying reallocate. You're not saying you don't want police, I'm presuming, right? You're not saying you don't want police providing safety. You want them to be trained differently and behave differently, right? As opposed to going away?
Well, there's a role for police, but I push back on the notion that, police and safety have to go hand in hand. When we talk about safety, the number one thing that makes me safe and secure is making sure that I have food security, housing security.
Yeah.
All right. You saw how Aaron Burnett there. Before I get to Aaron Burnett, though, I mean, Bowman's answer is fantastic. This is what I've talked about. Defund the police. The only debate when it comes to defund the police is how much. Defund all the way to abolish, or defund in terms of taking certain responsibilities away from the cops. So that's where the actual debate is. I mean, the idea that it's just a slogan, I mean, it shows you that both Clyburn and the CNN host don't do like an ounce of research into looking into what defund the police actually means. And if they do the research, that means they're just misinforming people. But all you have to, I mean, it takes 2 seconds. 2 seconds to look up defund the police and look up. There's books about it. There's a lot of various opinions on how it actually be implemented and pushed through. I mean, it is about taking responsibilities away from the cops, like say mental health calls, domestic disputes, calls for homelessness issues. I mean, moving this stuff away and putting the money into public healthcare and public housing and other areas, and having specialized people deal with those sorts of calls. And so, I mean, in that way, you can also argue that it actually helps the cops because it takes responsibilities away from them, and actually it ensures that they are able to focus on whatever few areas they have to focus on. Because it's human nature. If you have too many things to worry about, to take care of, you're not going to be good at all of them. So by taking those responsibilities off the cops and into other areas, into specialized areas, then you are not only just defunding the police, you are actually, you can argue, helping the cops that want to do good work, but are, encumbered by too much responsibility. So, but Aaron Burnett, now to get to her. I mean, this is cable news in a nutshell. They are so focused, and I did a story on MSNBC this week as well with a similar point. They are so focused on conservative voters, what conservatives want, what Trump voters want, what they're talking about, that they have no idea what actual left-wing voters want and how many are actually out there, how many exist. If you look at polling on issues like Medicare for all, huge majority of voters support Medicare for all, including conservative voters, because the poll they usually go to is look at how people self-identify. So they'll bring up the poll that shows people self-identify as moderate or conservative more than liberal. Forgetting the fact that the word liberal inherently, I would not call myself a liberal, so inherently it is not the correct label, and are not enough labels in that polling. But people may think that they are conservative or moderate, but when you actually poll them on specific policy issues like Medicare for all, or like free public college, or like ending the wars, or like raising wages, people agree with those policy initiatives. So despite that, you have these cable news pundits and hosts and anchors still just completely ignore a massive chunk of the country because they are so focused on what conservative and moderate voters want. And ultimately, it goes back to management. These are massive companies that enjoy the current system, that benefit from capitalism. So they have no reason. There is no benefit to them to properly represent the left-wing view, because they benefit by acting like the only choice is, super ultra conservative, including on cultural issues, or being what they would consider to be moderate, which is really just pro-corporate. So, I mean, the options are two corporate options, and the only differences for them really is on the social issues, on abortion rights. So with that as the focus of the conversation, you completely miss out an entire chunk of where the discussion should actually be. And this is why it is so important to have people like Jamal Bowman in Congress, not just, of course, for the actual, his votes when it comes to putting up these various ideas, but also when it comes to these media appearances. People like AOC and Jamal Bowman have opened people's minds to the reality that there is actually another way. It's not just two corporate options, but you actually have a different way of going about politics that is, free of that special interest money, and actually focuses and centers the interests of everyday people. And hopefully at some point, people on media will catch on, but at the very least, I'm glad they have people like Jamal Bowman on, because I think his presence enough is going to wake a lot of people up. All right. I do have one more story. That is not really, it's not really prepped, but I want to share the video anyways. Before that, though, let me get to some of these chats. I'm not even sure where I left off. Here we go. Dwayne Bramble says, on your free time, check out D.L. Hughley interview on DJ Vlad about U.S. politics. I don't agree with all views, but it's a great interview. I feel like I've never enjoyed that guy when I've seen him, but maybe it's worth checking out. Junie McGrath says, useless Trump does UBI, finds a COVID vaccine, reverse the SC discussion on DACA and trans rights, repeal the 1965 Voting Rights Act, and stops acting crazy. Then I don't know how he can win in November. Yeah, of course Trump's not going to do any of those things. But I mean, if he wanted to save his presidency, he would have to do all of that at the same time. It's not going to happen. Ravi Parimi says, rich people on TV staying willfully out of touch. Welcome to America. Yep. All right. Mr. Sir's back says, that time I got reincarnated as a slime equals good anime. I have no idea what that means, but all right. All right. I have a video here that I'm trying to pause. Jesus. Computer was freezing. So there is a new case of a wellness check going wrong in Canada. This is I'm going to play this video for you. This is a report on police allegedly punching a woman during a wellness check. Now, I've already covered recently a couple of wellness checks gone wrong in terms of one that ended in a fatality. Police actually broke into a man's home for a wellness check on the second floor, walked into his balcony, broke through his door. He was holding a knife. They shot him. He's dead. That was a wellness check. Another one in BC where a woman was dragged across the carpet by her arms behind her while she was passed out on the carpet, dragged her across the floor. Then the officer put her foot on the woman's head and then grabbed her by the hair. Another so-called wellness check. Well, here's another one. So this report here from CBC News.
Shauna Blanchard says in late May, she was struggling with depression amid the COVID-19 pandemic. She says after a rather heated argument with her son, she locked herself in the bathroom crying. She had scissors with her. When she wouldn't come out, her son called 911 to get her some mental health support. She says at no time did she mention suicide. Blanchard says she then heard sirens. She admits she is terrified of the RCMP. She asked the Mounties who came to her house to leave, but heard more police voices, so she pushed a dresser in front of her bedroom door. Eventually, she tried to come out, but claims officers were holding the door. She wrenched it open and says she saw 5 male Mounties reach for their guns. An officer told her they were apprehending her under the Mental Health Act. She said no and claims that's when a Mountie punched her in the face and knocked her unconscious. And just a warning for you, some of the images and sounds you are about to see may be disturbing to some people. This surveillance video shows Mounties taking Blanchard out of her house. Her face appears to be covered there. She says the officers smashed her face into the banister and she asked them to take that cover off. You can also hear her screaming. Now, eventually, you're going to see Blanchard in the back of the police car. There she is, her face bloodied. This is after and eventually bruised and with broken teeth. Blanchard claims the officers before this dropped her down a flight of stairs.
I became aware that I was falling down the stairs about halfway when my poor broken face bounced off the banister and left a mark, left a blood smear, a print.
Blanchard says she was taken to hospital, checked for a broken nose, 2 broken teeth, and later released. She says her children did not see what happened. She has no witnesses because police took them to a nearby house.
And Dan, the IIO is now investigating this incident. What do they have to say?
Well, it's not saying much right now, the police watchdog. However, it is involved. Take a listen.
The bottom line is that currently the police do have obligations. And as I say, they have an obligation at common law to protect life. So if they're given information about someone whose life may be in danger, they have certain obligations that they do have to attend. Of course, if they are going to use force, they have to do it within a reasonable range.
We have reached out to Nanaimo RCMP and Island District RCMP. They are not commenting right now because of the IIO investigation, and we'll have much more on this story at 11 o'clock.
All right. This is just another case of why police should not be called to wellness checks. Now, even apart from the details of this story, just think about in terms of the responsibilities that police forces have, that these officers have. They respond to all sorts of calls. Does it really make sense to have a one-size-fits-all force dealing with all of this? Just think about it. If you have 10 different responsibilities, are you going to be as effective as at those 10 different responsibilities that each have their own particular way of dealing with them, as opposed to if you had 2 or 3 responsibilities? Obviously not. So by taking responsibilities off of the police, which would mean defund the police, put some of that money into other areas like public health, into public housing, when it comes to like homelessness, for example, but putting money into other areas where you have specialized people answer those sorts of calls, people that know how to deal with a situation, with a wellness check, with somebody in crisis, that actually know how to deal with it, as opposed to having police officers where the people leave worse off than when the cops arrived. So, like, to me, this is the most obvious point. I don't understand how anybody could be against this. If you see how often these wellness checks go wrong, there is absolutely no reason to defend the cops continuing to answer these wellness checks. This responsibility, at the very least, this responsibility of wellness checks needs to be moved to another area where you have people specialized in public health in dealing with those sorts of calls. So for me, this is just another one of these examples showing you why the police, at the very least in terms of wellness checks, need to be defunded. All right. Okay. Let's chat. AI Cram 62 says Justice Democrats won U.S. NY Districts 12 and 14 and one other. Can we vote for Greens in 2, 4, 19, 23, 26? I don't know about those races. Also, you're talking about 2 years from now. This is the thing. If you want to support Green candidates, you got to put the investment in now. Like now. You got to build that now. You can't just, you can't pop up 2 months before the election and be like, this third party guy, vote for him. There has to be real on the ground movement building and interest. And the investment has to be put into building that sort of third party. So I'm definitely not against it, but the investment has to be made for it to actually succeed. Otherwise, it's not going to succeed. And also, keep in mind here, just because people are Democrats now doesn't mean they can't just break off and form a different party at some point. So if it gets to the point where leadership is not changing and you can't get leadership out, if you get enough of these people in, they can form their own caucus. And it can be a entry point into starting something outside of the Democratic Party. Dwayne Bramble says, this doesn't make sense. You can that most. I'll just read it as I see it. See if I can make sense of this. You can that most. This politician don't even read informative books, only drama and comics. Awesome tacular show. I got that part. Awesome tacular show. Have great and safe weekend, everybody. I know you guys got character limits, so it's hard to write sentences sometimes, but I can't make sense of the first part of this. But but thank you for the super chat. This thing on the left says, "Hey David, did you see that Representative Karen Bass was asked by Biden to be vetted? If Harris gets chosen, who should we primary her replacement with in Cali?" Karen Bass. I don't know about Karen Bass. Karen Bass. I want Barbara Lee. That's what I want. I don't expect it, but Barbara Lee is a principled congressperson who would be a good VP. But in terms of Harris, primary her replacement in California, I'm not against it. Yeah, I mean, California is a very progressive place in terms of the voters, and the Democrats there, for the most part, don't really represent that progressiveness. I mean, Nancy Pelosi in San Francisco, if you get your Hibitar in there instead of Pelosi, huge improvement. And if that were to happen, it would show the potential, the ability to primary somebody like Harris as well. Again, I think it would be hard, as Harris has now made a name for herself, and I think people in California they know her. Like, this is the biggest barrier to any challenge really is name recognition, because people aren't going to vote for somebody or against an incumbent that they maybe don't even like, but they're not going to vote against them if they don't know who they're voting for. So name recognition is huge. If you can get somebody early, like when it comes to primarying senators, it's a lot tougher. Doing it in districts is easier, smaller footprint, easier to get around the district and knock on doors. So getting out, people like Elliot Engel or Joe Crowley, it's a lot easier when you're in the House, but much tougher if it's a whole state. All right. Couple last refreshes here, and then I am gonna go. But chat seems nice and active, very active today. It's going a mile a minute here. Let's see if I can grab one of these chats. I'll be voting for Markey in Massachusetts primary. Yes, if you are in Massachusetts, make sure you are voting for Ed Markey. Make sure you are voting. Joe Kennedy, they're trying to challenge him, completely riding on his last name. Kennedy would be horrible. If he were to replace Markey, it would be horrible. So polling for Markey there. Also, shout out to Ed Markey being the only senator that follows me on Twitter. But Markey he's not a perfect senator, but recently he's been doing a lot of great work. on the Green New Deal with AOC, pushing for Medicare for all. Definitely back Markey. All right. Last chance to get in super chats. I think I saw one pop up. There's like a minute delay on the stream, so if you're hearing this now, you got 30 seconds or a minute. But let me read this super chat here. Tender Lungs 206 says, I got a video smoking a joint through a bong. It's allowed. I feel like it's not. And if it's allowed, maybe you can do it. See, I think the reality is people didn't see it. I mean, you can do it because, 200 views and 7 subs isn't going to raise the alarms of YouTube. But if I were to do something like that, which I wouldn't anyways, because why would I do something like that? But if I were, I would definitely get dinged for it. I mean, they'd probably pull my channel down. So it's not something I would risk. On here personally, but do what you want to do. Okay. I think I am done here. Thank you all for showing up again. You're all incredible. Reminder, Twitch live stream every Friday, Monday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern. So I'll be back on Monday live, and I'll see you all then. Wait, I think I just saw somebody do something. Oh, Lucky got your super chat in super late. AI Cram says, defund politicians. All right, there you go. Ending on that note, see you all later. Oh, one more. Jesus. Really pushing it here. All right, this is the last one. From Rich. Honest opinion, David. August 28th, March on Washington. Any chance Bernie can make a breakthrough? I have no idea. Did I hear another one? I'm hearing things. No, that was 2. Okay. All right. Gotta go. Sorry. See you all on Monday. Goodbye.